Hi everyone, hope you're doing good. Welcome back to another discography ranking video. This is the second one I've done, and in this one we're going to be ranking all the Trivium discography. Now, if you're not too familiar with Trivium, they're kind of like a modern heavy metal band with lots of other stuff in there. They started like 1999, I believe. The vocalist and guitarist Matt Heafy joined the band when he was 13, and the band kind of split into two. Him and the bassist Brent Young went off and done Trivium, and the other two, don't know what happened with them. But their style is sort of a mixture of all sorts of different styles of metal, mainly thrash, sort of Metallica, Pantera, Maiden. Quite a lot of Swedish melodic death metal as well, and some black metal in there, some progressive, some metalcore, a bit of everything really, to create the Trivium sound, which I think is quite unique. There's only 9 albums to go through, so we're gonna go through it now. But before we do, if you're new and you like the content that I make sure you drop me a sub and check the playlists out of the other content that I do. And thanks to everyone who's already subbed and for watching, commenting and everything. Really much appreciated. Now let's get straight into this. In number 9 and in last is Vengeance Falls from 2013. As album artwork goes, it's probably the best album artwork of their discography, probably ever. Well, not ever, but that I've ever seen anyway, that I've got in my collection. That is just fantastic. But the album itself is not as good as the others. This was kind of the beginning of the dip that Trivium had, sort of in 2013 when this come out. And yeah, there's a couple of songs on here that are basically a carbon copy of songs that come out on the album before this, which was In Waves. Quite a lot of In Waves-esque sounding songs on here, but there's still some good stuff on here. This was their 6th album, and this was their second and last album to feature Nick Augusto on drums. But there is some really good stuff on here, like the title track Vengeance Falls, Brave This Storm is really cool. Strife is a song that they always play live. Through Blood and Dirt and Bones, really cool. Villainy Thrives is really good as well. But yeah, there are some tracks on here that are a bit more commercially sounding and very much like some songs off In Waves, but we'll get to In Waves later. In 8th, and it's really close between these two, but in 8th I've got Silence in the Snow from 2015, the follow-up to Vengeance Falls. I think this is just a little bit better musically than Vengeance Falls. It's a little bit different. See, whereas Vengeance Falls is almost a copy of In Waves, this is a completely different sounding album. There's more variation of songs, better songs in my opinion. Yeah, the only thing that lets this album down is the production. And some people don't particularly like the vocals, but the production is just way too quiet on this album. It's just too quiet. You can't hear everything properly. You have to turn it up so loud to hear it all. But yeah, the thing with this album is that people don't like the vocal style because Matt sings everything. There's no screaming vocals or anything, because he blew his voice out before they done this album, and he didn't even think he'd be able to sing again. But he got a really good vocal teacher, I think the same one that M Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold uses, and he taught him how to scream properly, and his voice has never been better than it is than before, basically. But yeah, there's some really good stuff on here. There's some not great stuff, but there is some really cool songs. Silence in the Snow is really cool. Blind Leading the Blind I like. Dead and Gone. Pull Me From the Void. Until the World Goes Cold. They always play that one live. But the last two songs, Beneath the Sun and Breathe in the Flames, are probably the two best songs on this album. And yeah, this was a follow-up to Vengeance Falls, and the only album to feature Matt Maderio on drums. In number 7, we've got their latest album, What the Dead Men Say, that come out last year. This is a great album. There's some really cool stuff on this album. There's some stuff that is not as great. There's 2 tracks on here. Where is it? Scattering the Ashes and The Ones We Leave Behind are basically carbon copies of previous Trivium songs, which I wasn't a massive fan of. But there's the rest of the album's brilliant, really. I think the rest of the album's great. I did do an album review of this. But yeah, What the Dead Men Say, Catastrophist, Among the Shadows and the Stones is brilliant, that song. I really love Sickness Unto You, that's brilliant. Bending the Arc to Fear is really cool. Yeah, really, really great album. This is the second album to feature their current lineup with Alex Bent on drums. Really, really, really great. In number 6, we have their debut album, Ember to Inferno. This came out in 2003 when Matt was 16, which is just incredible to me that they done this when he was 16. It originally came out, it was a self-release, and this was before they signed to Roadrunner, which they've been on throughout their whole career. But this one was a self-release, MKH Productions, which is Matt's initials. And then the reissue, which this is, because there's a couple of extra bonus tracks off a demo that they done before this album, come out on Life Force Records. And yeah, this is really, really cool. This was the last one that I needed to buy. And yeah, it's really raw sounding, like it should be for a debut album with not brilliant production. But there's 3 tracks on here. The first track, one in the middle and one at the end, that are sort of just a nothing track really, which is a bit of a shame. Lets it down a bit. And quite a few of the songs sound quite similar to each other. The way he was writing at the time, they all kind of bleed into each other really. And there's a track, Fall Into Grey. That song, to me, is a blatant rip-off of Tornado of Souls by Megadeth. If you know that song, it'd be a travesty if you didn't know that song. But yeah, if you listen to Fall Into Grey, you'll get the whole Tornado of Souls vibe. But yeah, this album features Brent Young on bass for the recording, and Travis Smith as well. And then they completed their lineup. They got Paolo Gregolotto on bass, and they've had him ever since. And then they got Corey Beulieu, easy for me to say, blooming hell, Beulieu on lead guitar, and they've had him ever since as well. Yeah, and then Travis Smith, they kept him as well. But yeah, there's some really good stuff on here. Pillars of Serpents, If I Could Collect the Masses, Ember to Inferno, To Burn the Eye. My Hatred is really, really good. So yeah, worth checking out. Number 5, I've got In Waves from 2011. This is some people's favourite album, but for me, I think it's really, really good, but I think they have done better than this. But no doubt about it, there's some awesome stuff on here. There is some really, really great stuff. There's a few tracks before the end. There's a couple of tracks before the end that I'm not a massive fan of. But on the whole, this album is really, really great. There's some absolute banging stuff on here. This was the first album to feature Nick Augusto on drums. And this was their 5th album. Yeah, there's some awesome stuff on here. In Waves, Inception of the End is really cool. Dust Dismantle is one of my favourites. Watch the World Burn, Black, Skyline Severance, Chaos Reigns. Awesome songs. Yeah, all of these. Yesterday is the last song. Not really that bothered by that. It's probably one of my least favourite Trivium songs ever. But then, yeah, as I was saying with Vengeance Falls, if you listen to songs like Watch the World Burn, Black, Built to Fall, even Forsake Not the Dream, you can hear the Vengeance Falls on that. And I listened to Vengeance Falls before I heard this album, and when I listened to this, I was kind of thinking, oh, Vengeance Falls, that's what brings that one down, because it's basically a clone of the alright songs on this. But this album nonetheless is brilliant. Really, really love it. Number 4, I've got The Sin and the Sentence from 2017. This is almost perfect for me. Almost. There's some absolutely fantastic songwriting on this. The songs are just brilliant, sort of almost progressive in a way, but it's fantastic. There's a couple of tracks that I'm not a massive fan of. Other Worlds and Endless Night. If they wasn't on the album, I think that this could be a bit higher up, you know. But yeah, the rest of the album, The Sin, the Sentence, Beyond Oblivion, Betrayer, The Wretchedness Inside, Sever the Hand, The Revanchist, Thrown in the Fire, just all killer stuff. And this was the first album to feature Alex Bent on drums. Absolutely phenomenal drummer. Everyone in this band are just virtuosos at their instruments. They really are. And yeah, if you haven't checked this album out, give it a listen, because I think it's the best they've done over the last 12 years or so, since the early stuff, which ironically are the top 3. In third place on the podium, we've got the Crusade. This came out in 2006. This is their third album, and this is just a solid album. Very thrashing, like a bit like Metallica, especially in the vocals. Matt went for a James Hetfield style vocal on this album. It's just brilliant. You know, if you like Metallica and you like Iron Maiden, this album is definitely for you. Some really cool artwork as well on this. Really fast thrashing, really heavy, really technical. Some awesome tracks on here. For me, I think there's slightly too many. If they had cut a couple of these songs towards the end, I think it would have been perfect. But yeah, Ignition, Detonation, Anthem We Are the Fire, Unrepentant is awesome. Very much like Through the Never by Metallica. Become the Dragon, To the Rats. The last song, the title track, The Crusade, is a fantastic 8-minute epic instrumental. It's absolutely awesome. So yeah, nothing wrong with this album at all. I know people don't like it because of the James Hetfield, but there's nothing wrong with this at all. This is like their almost like their Kryptonite album that quite a lot of bands or quite a lot of people don't like this, which is I don't get, because it's just it's amazing to me. I love it. Number 2, we've got Shogun from 2008. Now this is the first album I actually heard by Trivium, and it got me hooked. It got me hooked onto Trivium to want to listen to some more, because this is an absolute masterpiece, a fantastic display of shred. I mean, the guitar solos on the Crusade, they're good, but on this, they take it up another level. It's just absolutely insane. Immense guitar playing, incredible songwriting. Every single track on here is all killer. There's not a rubbish song on here. Every single one's a killer. The vocals are brilliant on this. He goes back to the screamo vocals on this, because on the Crusade he actually dropped a lot of the screamo vocals, but on this he started to do it a bit more. This is the last album to feature Travis Smith, and yeah, absolutely fantastic album. Let's go through this. Down from the Sky is a classic that they always play live. Into the Mouth of Hell We March, love that one. Insurrection, Calamity, Like Callisto to a Star in Heaven, I've done a cover of that, or an attempted cover of that. Yeah, Torn Between Scylla and Charybdis, awesome, absolutely fantastic. This is a masterpiece, absolute masterpiece. But it's not quite as good as my number one. My number one, this was really hard to pick between Shogun and this, because they're both fantastic albums. But if you know Trivium, you know what this number one is, and it's Ascendancy, their second album from 2005. I absolutely love this. I mean, Shogun got me onto Trivium, but this got me into Trivium, if that makes any sense. As soon as I heard this, I was absolutely hooked, and made me want to. This got me into. It not only got me into metalcore, it got me into Trivium. It turned Trivium into one of my favourite bands of all time. And considering that Matt was 18 when they done this album is just mind blowing, just absolutely mind blowing. Some awesome songs on here, some fantastic guitar solos. It's all killer, no filler. Every single song on here is fantastic. I love the brutality in the vocals. The screamo is just fits so well, and that's what that for me is my Trivium that I like. The screamo vocals, the sheer brutality. It's just another level. And yeah, every single song on here is a banger. Rain, Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Murder, Ascendancy, Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation is awesome. Like Light to the Flies, The Deceived, Departure, Declaration, the whole thing is absolutely killer. And yeah, check this out if you haven't listened to it. Check all the Trivium albums out, because to be honest with you, it was hard to make a ranking for these albums, because I like them all. I love them all. They haven't really done a really bad album, which just shows how great they are, how great musicians they are. So that has been my ranking of the Trivium albums. I'd love to know what you think of Trivium, whether you like them or not, or whether you've never heard them in your life. What's your favourite Trivium album, and what would be your ranking as well? I'd love to see what yours is. We can have a chat about Trivium, whether you agree with my ranking or not. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching if you got this far. All feedback's much appreciated. I don't know what the next discography ranking will be. It might be Slipknot, but I've no idea. But until then, keep it metal.